If we know that yelling at our children is not a good parenting strategy, why do we still do it? This is what we're going to talk about today. I'm actually going to go through the reasons why we have this reflex to yell at our children, what that actually does to our children, and how we can get ourselves out of that habit. So there's a lot to cover today. For those who don't know me, my name is Danielle C. Baker. I am the founder and CBO of Being Connected. I'm also a registered early childhood educator with over 20 years experience in the field. I help parents, teachers, and educators navigate the realities of what parenting is today. But don't get it twisted when you work with me. We're putting the child's needs first. So we're going to have to put the ego and pride aside, and let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. Before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, with season 2, this episode is brought to you by the Self-Esteem Doctor Online Academy with the amazing Dr. Simone Alicia. It has a wealth of resources on that website to help with your child's confidence and self-esteem and so much more. So I will put the link in the description below so you can have a look at that. I highly recommend it. There's great resources there. So we're going to jump right in with the yelling issues, right? Quite a bit, but before I get into the whole bit, I do want to stress the fact that there is a difference between being loud and yelling. Right? It's a cultural thing, and I'm going to explain that a little bit. My house, we're French and Jamaican, so we loud, right? We are very loud. If you come from a very quiet and peaceful home environment and you come over to our house for a cookout, you're not going to feel comfortable. But we're not actually at each other's throats. We're having a really good time, and we just get louder and louder, and French people talk with their hands, and it just looks like we're being very aggressive, but in fact that's just the way we are. So there is a difference culturally between being just loud and animated and passionate about what we're talking about versus yelling. And we can actually tell the difference for those who were raised in that kind of environment where we are very expressive and very loud. There is a difference, and we know the difference when we're being yelled at or if we're just joking around, right? And so in my case at home, because we're French and Jamaican, we actually we communicate in our second language in English. So of course, our internal monologues in our first language is a lot faster, right, than what the internal translator will be able to spew out. So once we start getting angry and frustrated, the one thing you will realize when we're actually starting to yell is that we start stammering. So if you hear us start to stutter, it's time for you to take a step back, basically. So that's just an example, my personal example of the difference between just being loud and yelling. There is a difference. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you'll feel like somebody's yelling at you if you don't know that person, but they're really just expressive. So we're going to move into the yelling part. Why do we do it? Why do parents yell at their kids? You know it's wrong. You don't actually want to do it, but there's just something that snaps in you, and all of a sudden you just start yelling. And I will just tell you right off the bat, it's not our fault, right? It's generational. We're yelling at our children because our parents yelled at us, and because our grandparents yelled at our parents and the great grandparents. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So it's ingrained in us. It's subconscious. We actually yell at our kids when we are frustrated, when we are angry, when we are fed up. And so this is where we need to understand that yelling is not actually a parental strategy. It's an emotional response. We are breaking down. We're having our own meltdown, and we're taking it out on our kids. So there's a big difference there. And this is why yelling has a huge impact on our children, because we're dumping our own emotional baggage onto our children. Now, they could have triggered it, and sometimes they don't trigger it. We're just triggered, and we take it out on our children. So in a sense, yelling at our children is abuse. It really is. When you look at why we yell at our children, it's abuse. We're going through some stuff and we're dumping it on somebody in a negative way, shaming them, belittling them. And so it is abuse. And this is why it's not a parental strategy. It isn't at all. It really is just an emotional response. So we have to take that into consideration. First of all, it's not our fault. It's generational. It's a cycle. It's a snowball effect. So we need to stop it. And I'm all about breaking cycles. I'm all about breaking patterns. And this is definitely one that needs to be broken. I have been guilty of yelling towards even, I went through a period where I was yelling a lot more. Not proud of it. I'm just kind of admitting it. Wasn't proud of it. And even while I was yelling, I was going, why am I doing this? I couldn't even understand myself. So it's not a parental strategy. And the reason why we get triggered often is our children will reflect our triggers back at us. And because we love our children unconditionally, we know we can't just get mad at them or leave them like we would our spouse. We would just at one point, our partner would just leave them if we could deal with it. Well, we're not going to do that with our children. So it's really hard for us to accept the fact that they're showing us where we need to heal all of our emotional baggage, all of our triggers, all of our wounds that we've been burying and avoiding our entire life. Our children come into this beautiful world and just show it right back at us. And it's hard for us to digest. So that's one of the reflexes that we will have. So our triggers, our wounds, our traumas are being reflected through our children. The way that they're behaving brings us back to this memory of when we were struggling as children and we were not getting the support that we needed from the parental figures in our lives, right? And it could also say, I would go even further and say it could go against our values. When your core values are disrespected in whatever way that means to you, we'll have a strong reaction. So when our children are not listening to us, when our children are talking back at us, if respect is a very huge value for you, very important value, and your child is doing what you deem disrespectful, it will trigger you and you will react aggressively sometimes. It happens not just with your children, but with a coworker, with family members, with your partner. So our values are being triggered as well. Basically, I've done an episode on this, on parental triggers. And so when we have that reflex to yell at our children, we have to remember that our children are actually showing us where we need to heal. If you don't want to dump your emotional baggage, if you don't want to traumatize your child, if you don't want to be the one responsible for your child having to deal with childhood traumas, you need to take that seriously, identify those triggers and heal, work on it, fix it so that your child doesn't have to fix it for you later on, or just pass it on again to the next generation. What happens when we yell at our children? And this is very important when I say we don't do it on purpose. We don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to scar my child for life. It's just life happens. And unfortunately, we dump it on our children sometimes. But the first thing, once we start yelling, they will have the same reaction we would have if somebody yelled at us. They stop listening. So whatever it is that you're trying, whatever morals you're trying to spew out at your child as a teachable moment, they're actually not listening to you. They stop listening. You're yelling at them. You're disrespecting them. You're abusing them. Of course, they're going to shut down. Their natural instincts kick in. They go into survival mode. Now they're not in a safe environment. They are in danger. You are the source of it. So they shut down. That part of their brain shuts down, and now they're just in the flight, fight, freeze, or faint mode. They're not listening to you anymore. And they're not capable of talking to you either, because that is also the part of the brain that shuts down when they feel in danger. So your child stops listening. So whatever you're spewing at them, it's just dead air. It's a waste of oxygen at that point. They're not listening. Children also believe that everything that happens in their environment is their fault. They don't see fault in adults. Adults are perfect because we're the one who care for them. We are the ones who keep them alive. We feed them, we clothe them, we take care of them when they're sick. So they can't see fault, even if we're not the best adults in their life. They still won't see us as bad. We are perfect in their eyes. So if you're yelling at your child, the initial response is, it's my fault. I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? So they're going to be thinking about, what did I do? What did I do wrong? And they can't find it because it's not their fault. It's your it's your stuff that you're dumping on them, right? So they're thinking, what did I do wrong? And they can't find it because they didn't do anything wrong, really, for you to yell at them. They may have done something wrong, but the yelling part is not on them. So then they're going to start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? What kind of horrible person am I to upset this perfect adult? And what kind of horrible, stupid person am I to not even know what I did wrong? So the self-esteem shut down, confidence shuts down. They put all the blame on them. They're taking on your pain because they think that you cannot be a bad person. So it's a very heavy burden. That's where the trauma happens. And that will be a lifelong struggle for them. So it is a serious thing that we need to stop. And this is why we need to stop this pattern. It brings on shame. Of course, they're going to feel ashamed. They can't understand why, what they did wrong in that instance. They know they may have spilled something. They know they may have had bad grades. They know that they didn't pick up their toys like you asked them to, right? But the yelling part, they don't understand how it got to that. You also have to look at it in a sense that sometimes your children will do it, whatever it is that triggers you. They keep doing it every day and it will not trigger you. But the one day that you're having a bad day, you're not feeling well, you will snap. So they really don't understand what's happening. It does have a lasting damage. If this is a continuous thing, once in a while, I mean, you can talk to your child to tell them, explain to them that it's not their fault. All of that, we'll get into it a little bit later. But if it's a continuous thing, it's a constant thing of yelling and yelling and yelling, then there is lasting damage. You will lose connection with your child because they don't feel safe around you. So of course they're going to shut down. So you're doing some damage in terms of your connection with you and for future relationships with other people, whether it is professional, personal, or family relationships. They will just not trust anybody anymore. So you have to look at that in that way. It can lead to behavioral issues because they think they're horrible, because their self-esteem is low, because they can't self-regulate, because you can't self-regulate, right? Remember that your child's behavior is modeled by you. They're watching you move constantly. You could tell them verbally how to behave, but that doesn't work. They're going to watch you. And that's how this. So if you're having meltdowns and breakdowns with them, they're going to carry that through into adulthood. So it can lead to behavioral issues. And I mentioned earlier as well, self-esteem, of course, they're being shamed, they're being blamed, they're being belittled, and they're questioning their worth. So that can actually lead into depression later on in the teen years, preteens, or even earlier. And it does even more damage to children that may be neurodivergent, depending on what that is, because they don't necessarily have the same social cues as a neurotypical person. They will take on that blame even more. It will do so much more damage to those children because they don't process that in the same way. It is known, if you can move away from yelling, and once you start practicing getting yourself out of that, you will notice that when you say the right things at the right moment in the right tone, your child is actually going to start listening to you. They're going to start cooperating, right? They're going to start paying attention because now they want to listen to you, right? It's no longer I have to, is that I want to. They don't feel threatened. They don't feel in danger. And they don't shut down. Their brain doesn't literally shut down. So they are open to listening to you. and to fix whatever it is that triggered you in the first place. So this is why it's so important to break that pattern, because when you're yelling, like I said, your child's not listening to you. But once you start speaking to them in the right way, at the right time, in the right tone of voice, with the right body language, your child will actually just listen to you naturally. It will happen naturally. So it's on you to stop that behavior so that you can open up better communication with your child. So that's what you have to remember, why you need to stop yelling at your child. We were brought up as authoritative, right? The hierarchy. You needed to respect your elders. You needed to respect your parents. So if they yelled at you, it was almost like a right for adults to yell at children, because I come from a generation where even the neighbors could yell at you and your teachers could yell at you, and the community could discipline you. So it was a right. It was to assert your dominance over a helpless human being. And we're following that still. So yeah, there's some changes that need to be done there. So just remember that when you stop yelling, your child is actually going to want to cooperate with you. They're actually going to want to listen because now they want to. It's not imposed on them in a shameful way. Now, how do you stop yelling? That is the big thing, right? I'll give you very simple. There's so many things. So I invite you to go and Google it, do some research. There's a lot more, but I'll give you the basic one that you could start today. It does take time. Don't forget that we're talking about generations of subconscious habits. It's not going to change overnight, right? On average, it takes 21 days to change a habit, whether it's good or bad. This is generational. It will take longer, right? Doesn't matter how strong-willed you are. It will always kind of resurface at one point. So the first thing you're going to need to do, and that's what's going to be taking a lot of time, and that's where parents will give up and not do it and keep yelling, because now you got to look at inside yourself and say, what are my triggers? Why am I yelling? What's happening right now? It has nothing, at that point, it has nothing to do with the child's behavior. It has nothing to do with what your child did. Now it's on you. What's going on in here, right? What is my child reflecting back to me that I can't accept? So find your triggers. Find out when you're about to lose it. When you feel yourself losing, sometimes it's instinct. Like sometimes you don't even think about it. It's a split second and you've lost control and you're having your meltdown. But sometimes you can feel it. It's boiling. It's just there. So find out when you're about to lose it, when you're able to pinpoint it just before you start yelling. Take a scan of your body. How does it show up in your body? Does your jaw clench? Does your breathing change? Do you feel hot? Like, do you feel heat in your face? How, the heart rate? Are you like, blood pressure went high? So how is it sitting in your body? That's going to help you a lot. But find your trigger. Why is this bothering you? Like I said, sometimes your child will have behaviors that they do all the time that doesn't bother you, but that one day you just snap. What is going on in your environment? Is it because the room is messy? Is it because you had a hard day at work? Is it because you're mad at the other parent? Is it, right? So find out what is that trigger so you can change it. There, in that moment, because like I said, this is going to take time. It's internal reflection. You need to go within. You may need to go and seek help. But to help you deal with it when it's happening while you're doing your healing process, one technique that I find really helpful is what is called the double inhale. So when you notice that you're about to lose it, it's a double inhale through the nose and then you exhale through the mouth. So it's like a type of thing. I know you look silly, but it's a lot better than what you look like when you're yelling. Okay. So that can help, because now it's changing up your breathing pattern. It's changing up your heart rate. So your body's going, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because a lot of the times when we get frustrated, we will yell because we're frustrated, we're hurt, we're angry, we're embarrassed. Sometimes we're just flat out embarrassed, we're annoyed. There's a lot of negative emotions there. So when we change it up, our body, when we're in those emotions, we actually stop breathing. A lot of the times our breathing is way off. So throwing it off with this pattern will change your mind. Subconsciously, it'll kind of scatter those clouds, and you can gain control of yourself. So that helps a lot. That's a quick tip there to help you. Works with the partners as well. Just letting you know. So anytime you feel like you're about to snap, do that. It does help. You're going to need to change your environment. Like I said, if it's the environment that's bothering you, if the room is messy, if the house is constantly messy, why? Well, okay, that's not the child's fault. If you're a hoarder, if there's bills all over the table, that's not your child's fault. Your toys is all over the place because your stuff is all over the place. So you have to think about that as well. Change up your environment, change up the room if you need to. If it's an environment is just not just the physical environment, but in every aspect of your life. What are your relationships like? Did you snap at your child because you just had a conversation with a family member over the phone that just irritated you, right? And is that constantly happening with that same family member? So you may need to clean up your relationships. You may need to cut some people out of your life because they bring the worst out of you. Why would you want to keep them around? Your children are showing you what you need to heal in your life, what you need to fix in your life to be a better parent and a better person. So take that to your advantage. Your child is showing you, is healing you. So you may have to cut some people out of your life. What's your employment situation this is very stressful. Start looking at that. There's an imbalance in your life. Your child is showing it to you and you're dumping it on them. So find that out. It's going to take time, but do the work. It is so worth it. So worth it. Believe me. Eye contact helps. Now you're dumping everything on your child. Eye contact, go down to their level. You see that, and a lot of people make fun of that. Go down on a knee and maintain that. Be at eye level with your child, because we were raised in this, disciplinary, where the adult is standing and you're low, you're lower than them, you're below them, or you can't even make eye contact. In some situations, you can't even make eye contact with an adult. Changing that up, going back to their level, being really eye level with them will instantly calm you down, because now you're not taking that superior role. I need to prove you that I need to prove to you that I'm better than you, that my words are more important to you than you. When you go back down to their level, it's easier to have that contact. It helps to soothe your child as well, and it helps to calm you down. So those are some very helpful tips that you could do right away while you're doing the healing. If you don't want to heal, that's okay. But just remember that it's your child that's cleaning up your mess afterwards. So you have a part in that as well. That's what I'm going to leave you with. If you have any questions, every situation is different. And now I'm just talking about regular, if you have behavioral issues with your child, if it's a chronic thing. Like I said, some neurodivergent children may have other underlying challenges there that will lead you to, but just remember that when it comes to yelling, once you're yelling, it's no longer about your child and what your child has done. It's all on you at that point. Just remember that. And even not with your child, but with anybody that you interact with. But we're going to talk about children today. I'm going to leave you with that. If there's something in particular that you need, if there's a resource that you need, if you need additional help, I can definitely help you with that. I'm all about breaking those patterns to give a better chance for your children, right? That ends with us. That's the way I see it. So I will leave you with that. Do not forget to follow, like, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And don't forget to check out this Self-Esteem Doctor Online Academy. That's going to help you as well with those kind of situations. So I'm going to leave you with that. Until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.